Welcome back to the channel, guys. Sorry about being late. Just a few technical difficulties in the background. But listen, if you are watching this on Rumble, make sure you head over to my YouTube channel, me and Sean's YouTube channel at Serial Killing Minds. It's all lowercase, that's the handle, or use the link in the description. If you're watching this on the Holden official channel, make sure you jump over to the Serial Killing Minds channel. The link will be found in the description also, or use the handle at Serial Killing Minds. Head over now. If you're watching this on the Serial Killing Minds channel, fantastic. Make sure you share, guys. Share, copy link to clipboard, make a little social media post. The only way these channels like this grows is if you share. Sharing's caring, spreading the word is good. And always, guys, the only toll you have to pay for this channel, I do not want your money. I do not want anything like that. Make sure you like the video and subscribe and hit that notification bell. That's all I want from you. I do not want your money. Just hit that like button and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you want, share. And also leave a comment in the comment section after the live has been completed. Not just in the live chat, in the comment section, because that sort of helps us out in the algorithm. So this is streaming actively right now on Rumble, Holden official, and me and Sean's Serial Killing Minds channel. As I say, if you're on Rumble and on Holden official, head over now and subscribe to the Serial Killing Minds channel. The link for that is in the description of the Rumble live and the Holden official live right now. So head over now and subscribe to that if you're into that type of that type of content. Obviously you are, or you wouldn't be here. Tonight we're going to be talking about Richard Cottingham. Richard Cottingham is the torso killer. He's from New York, and this guy is one of the most brutal serial killers that you will ever hear of. Me and Sean talk about backstage about how we have organized serial killers and disorganized serial killers. Tonight, we're talking about an organized, sophisticated, intelligent serial killer that also looks like Santa Claus. We're not doing it because it's coming up to Christmas. It's just a random thing that we're speaking about, a random serial killer we were speaking about last week, and we want to speak about him today. Last week, we talked about Fritz Honka. If you want to check that out on the Serial Killing Minds channel. He was an unorganized serial killer. Tonight is an organized serial killer. So let's bring Sean on. Well, Sean's here. Let's unmute Sean. And we'll get straight into the Sean's got a wealth of knowledge. If you don't know who Sean is, Sean Warner speaks to serial killers. My guest, the co-owner of at Serial Killing Minds channel, speaks to serial killers that are in prison right now. And one of the biggest ones he spoke to, I think, was BTK and many more. So let's hear what Sean has to say, and let's get into this ASAP. Sean, how are you keeping, sir?
Hey, how you doing? I'm okay.
I am. Listen, I am absolutely beautiful, man. It's, once again, I look forward to these every single week. And we spoke about something. We spoke about Richard Cottingham, and you were saying this guy was an organized, sophisticated, brutal serial killer. I suppose where we could start off with any of this, with all of these lives that we do, is, do you want to tell the audience where was Sean, where was Richard Cottingham from, and what was his childhood like before we get into the juicy details? Let's profile him from the beginning.
Okay. He was he's from New York. Not the city, but that's where he worked. He ended up working as an IT guy back in the very beginning of IBM, and he was kind of at the forefront of computer programming and things of that nature. He was a really smart guy, family man. He had a couple kids, a wife. His story is in that case really similar to BTK. He was kind of a guy who led a double life. I mean, his wife didn't know about his extracurricular activities, so to speak. But he did have a room in the house that no one else was allowed to go in except for him, and that's where he kept his trophies and souvenirs from his various crimes. And you know, he at first it was thought that he had killed as many as 18, but now recently he has confessed to at least 11 more murders.
On top
Six.
of the on top of the
Yeah,
18 murders that he
yeah.
has, there's it possibly could be 11 more murders. That's absolutely
No,
crazy,
no,
man.
there actually are 11 more, but they're trying to close more cold cases where he was at least a suspect or a person of interest. And now with the DNA and the genealogical data that they have that can tie killers into more crimes, and as long as the DNA hasn't degraded to the point where it's not usable, they can at least identify um, a person of interest as either being at the scene, being there, and not being able to be excluded. So these detectives in New Jersey and New York have opened their cold case files and are working with a somewhat reluctant Richard Cottingham in closing these cases. And I mean, these guys are really, um, giving him, they're having like poker nights, getting him uh, cheeseburgers, pizza, pretty much any little luxury that they can offer him, just to try to build a rapport with him to get him to close some of these cases. And although at first and still really he's reluctant to do so, he has confessed and been convicted on, I believe, no less than three more cases, possibly as many as six. But they expect his body count could reach, uh, into the triple digits, over a
What?
hundred. Yeah,
What?
yeah. He started killing in the late '60s. So he started killing at a young age. He was, the thing about him is he wasn't a goofball in high school. He was kind of you know, well liked, athletic guy. He wasn't bullied. He wasn't um, picked on. He wasn't like um, you know, the most popular guy, but he wasn't by any means picked on or alienated. Um, he was a fairly you know good looking guy. He didn't have any problems with getting dates or anything like that. But the thing about it is he was extremely uh, violent. He had a terrible temper, and as you can see, he kind of well, I guess he was always a bigger guy. So
He looks like Santa Claus. Like,
yeah,
let's
he,
face
he
it.
does. He
He
looks.
looks like he doesn't have. I'm looking at the guy's eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he looks like the type of guy. I know people are going to say, "Oh, he looks like a wrong," and he looks like he would do something like that, but he actually doesn't. He looks like the type of guy that maybe you would meet, like a school teacher, and you
Yeah.
think that he's a nice guy, and he's like a friendly face. He's got that Santa Claus beard going on. He doesn't have those dark, piercing serial killer eyes. So
No.
is this what makes him sort of like an enigma, a rare case that actually this guy had a good upbringing, he had a good life, and he could be one of the most notorious serial killers that people don't know about? Like for Richard Cottingham, he doesn't, when researching him, there's not a lot of people speaking about him, but
No.
actually he could be more notorious than Ted Bundy. That's
Oh,
could be a
sure.
registered fact very, very soon.
Yeah, he could easily surpass Bundy's known body count, but again with Bundy, he took a lot of secrets to the grave. Um, there's speculation that Bundy has at least double, the amount of known bodies to his credit. Um, so, the thing about investigating serial killers is they're all, you know, narcissistic, but they're also liars. They're not gonna um, readily give up what they know, the one thing that they know they have a value, and that's information. And they know that these families want closure, and they know that these agencies want to close out cold cases, and they know that they're holding all the cards. So they're not going to just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to help you guys out. You know, those cases that you're looking at, I did all those. It doesn't happen that way. You know, it's going to be a game, like a game of chess all the way until the end. Now, Richard Cottingham, he's in failing health now. So what they get from him is what they get. Once he's gone, they are really turning up the heat on him, kind of, getting him to say, look, don't you have kids? Wouldn't you want to know if you were in that position? And see, his thing is, he doesn't want the notoriety that Dennis Rader or some of the other guys wanted. He doesn't want to be in the papers. He doesn't want his family didn't know for the longest time that he was the quote torso killer.
Was he the the Times Square
Yes,
killer?
yeah,
Yeah,
the
so
same
it's
guy.
the torso killer, the Times Square killer. But I suppose then my question would be, if he's not a narcissist and he doesn't want to be infamous and he doesn't want that notoriety and he looks like your everyday friendly Santa Claus, then in
I
your
he is
opinion,
a
and
narcissist.
before
Yeah.
we actually get into the nitty gritty of who he is, in
Mhm.
your opinion, why do you think that he started serial killing, and why do you think that he went as extreme to maybe have hundreds of victims? In your opinion,
I think that he has uh, a natural hatred for women, um, especially, we've talked about it on here before, about the, sex workers, and how um, a lot of the offenders sort of target them because they're easy prey, but there's some that really, hate them, for whatever reason, whether it be religious, or whatever psychological reasons they have. Um, just
could he just be a sadist where he gets the gratification
Yes, he
from the
was.
torture? Yeah.
I didn't mean to mislead anyone to think that he's not a sexual sadist. He certainly is. He when he was working at um IBM, I believe. He worked beside a guy who he would tell about his weekend adventures in these sex clubs that they had in the 70s in New York City. One of them being Plato's Retreat, one of them being the Hellfire Club. Now, these were notorious sex clubs. These weren't clubs where you would just go and look at strippers. These were clubs where they were swingers, orgies, BDSM, and Richard Cottingham was, he was not the type to be dominated. He was, he was the one who wanted to do the dominating. He was the person
So he
who.
had a sexual dominance in him towards women. And
Mhm.
listen, each to their own. There's people out there that are dominatrix, like
Sure,
for the
yeah,
women.
yeah.
There's
There's no
dominant men,
saying.
but to actually go further and to kill over that, to me, is the next level. So I suppose then we'll start off this by saying, right, we've established where he's from. He didn't have really a bad upbringing. He was a handsome bloke. He had a good job. He had a family. When then did he start killing? And can you take us, we'll not go through all the victims because there's too many, but
Yeah, there's a lot.
when then was his first victim? What year was that, and how did he do that?
There, what's being said now as his first offense is 1967. I believe he was still in his late teens. Um, it was a someone he knew, that uh, I don't think there was like a mutual attraction, but there was a trust that he was able to exploit and get this person in their car, drive to a secluded area, strangled or suffocated. Um, he doesn't remember which, um, but and he left the body in the back seat of the car in a state of semi undress. Um, and
Did he sexually assault that person?
yes, yes, and
So it was sexually motivated murder, his first victim.
yeah, and DNA was left at the scene in the form of seminal fluids. Um, at the time, they couldn't, do anything with it. They couldn't, the best they could do back then with blood was to type it, and that say, okay, well, the killer is typo negative, so okay, that doesn't really, get you any
Yeah,
closer.
you can't genetically trace somebody from their type of blood. I 100% get that. So
Right.
do you think then, from his first killing, what we know from his first killing, then, that his sexually motivated killing of that woman, he would maybe, I'm reading a lot to do with killers that can only get their rocks off during the act of killing somebody. Do you
Hmm.
think there was something to do with that, like sort of like a
Yeah.
semi necrophiliac, not
Not
full
necessarily.
necrophilia where he's going for dead bodies, but he sort of needs the act of killing will get him aroused, and actually that's what how he gets his kicks. Do you know what I mean? The
Sure.
killing part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The killing, the domination, the power play, it's he has the life and death in his hands at that moment. And when you're dealing with a more organized offender and a more intelligent offender, you have more complex motivations, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
whereas somebody like who we talked about last week, um, Fritz Honka, like I said, was almost a serial killer, by accident.
very unorganized guy. And I suppose then that would lead us on, instead of going through all the victims here, we'll talk about a few of the victims. We can't go through all of them because, as Sean's just stated, there could be over 100, triple digits with victims. Could be over 100 victims. This guy could be more notorious than Ted Bundy,
Mhm.
in regards to serial killing. So, what made him organized then? And so we know that they were sexually motivated, and we know why he done it, because he probably was getting his kicks with this here, right? And he
Right.
had lack of empathy, and he could do this to women. But what made him organized in the sense that he? Two questions then. What made him organized, and what was his span of serial killing? From what date, from start to end?
67 to um, the mid 80s. I want to say he was apprehended around 85.
Ooh,
Um, he,
wow.
yeah, he was a prolific serial killer. He the the thing about him was, see, what he started out as was like a killer of, an opportunistic killer. He didn't plan, um, tonight I'm going to go out and kill somebody. It's something, happens, events line up, boom, he goes for it.
So
Now
he's
later,
random. He's a random killer.
at first, see, this is the thing about Cottingham, is his modus operandi evolved as he evolved as a killer. You know, when he got his job in Manhattan, in the city, and he's having access to um, these sex clubs, he also, you know, Times Square in the 70s, it was not like it is today. There were no Disney musicals and things of that nature. It was pure, one sex shop, one sex show, one sex theater after another.
Well,
You
I
know,
did, like, just to reference Joey Diaz. Joey Diaz talked about Times Square in the 60s and the 70s, and he says, look, this place was absolutely buzzing with just sex shows. It was a dirty, disgusting place. Like, you could
yeah,
go and you could get drugs. It was only after
it was
it was cleaned,
junkies. I mean,
junkies everywhere.
it was cleaned up in the around the time that Cottingham was apprehended. Strangely enough, not that I think one has anything to do with the other, but my first trip to New York, I was 17. It was at the end of the real Times Square. There was still a lot of the open air prostitution. There was still a lot of the sex shops. Disney had not taken over everything. It wasn't like the era of MTV doing Total Request Live in Times Square. It was still filthy. And that's why I wanted to go. I wanted to see where all my, I wanted to go to CBGB's. I wanted to go and see where all my favorite bands came from. I wanted to see the Ramones. I wanted to see the New York Dolls. I wanted to see all that. And luckily, I got to. But
It was a crazy time though. Between that period, you could just imagine what New York would have been like between the 60s and whenever he was apprehended in the 80s, the late 80s. So it's like, for me, what you've got there is, and what people need to understand, and this is where I can actually have a little bit of input, why these serial killers were able to operate as they did. Because a lot of people come and say, well, hold on, why were these people not caught? It must be a conspiracy. Yes, there was that, because me and Sean are going to be talking about a whole thing to do with all how these serial killers are linked in together, and MK Ultra and all of that stuff. But the reality of the situation is, right, so what you have between the 60s and the 80s, you have a policing problem in the United States of America and around the world, essentially, especially
especially
in the
in New York. New York
yeah.
was
and and
it
a
was so
narcissistic policing problem. So you have districts and precincts not giving each other information. So for instance, if there's a woman killed with a feather in her mouth in precinct 19, and then the next week there's a woman found with a feather in her mouth dead, killed in the exact same way in precinct 30, they don't collaborate with one another because they want to catch the serial killer, and that serial killer essentially then is facilitated by the narcissistic precincts or districts, just so they can, one of them, get the rap of catching the serial killer. So essentially these serial killers could have been caught a lot faster, but it was actually a corrupt, not a corruption problem, but it was a problem inside the policing system of the United States. That's why Bundy got away with stuff. That's why BTK got away with stuff. That's why all these guys, in my opinion, could have been caught a lot faster if the cops worked together as like a federal thing, where there's one database and all the evidence is piled into one thing, and then everybody can look at it. That's where they went wrong. They didn't do it. They didn't do that. They kept it separate. And that's how these serial killers were facilitated in New York and around the United States, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, they didn't have like VICAP, which was the Violent Offenders Initiative. Um, they, like you said, one precinct didn't tell the other what was going on. There were a task force. That was unheard of. You wouldn't hear of the federal agencies working with the local agency.
It's not just that. It wasn't even. Yeah. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It wasn't. We're not looking for sophistication of technology and databases and computer systems. We're talking about you would have literal policing districts going to another policing district saying, we've got a body here with certain markings that we think is a serial killer. We know that you've got a similar body. Is there any chance that we can connect these two bodies? And they would be met with an outright, no, you're not seeing this body because we want to catch the serial killer, which then actually facilitated that serial killer to be out in the public for longer. If the two districts or precincts or whatever connected with each other and got rid of that glory hunting of catching serial killers, then actually they probably could have knuckled down and caught them a lot sooner. But that's something that the movies don't tell you, by the way. That's something that the TV shows don't tell you, because Hollywood has to be a certain way, but that is the cold hard truth. And it's so wrong, because the victims that most of these serial killers went after were women that were seen not desirable in society because they were prostitutes or something. So they were like, yeah, let them kill the prostitutes, let them get a body rack up, so then we can make a couple of books out of this whenever we do catch them. I even heard a story, Sean, where there was, I don't know, I think it could have been New York, I forget the guy's name, but cops actually had leads on a serial killer and they didn't apprehend him because they wanted him to do more. So then when they did apprehend him, they were able to write an extensive book and paper coverage, and they could have made money off it. That's the type of corruption you're dealing with in regards to the United States police enforcement. It's absolutely crazy. They're worse than the serial killers, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, well, and you had the same thing going on one side of the country as the other. In New York in the 70s, you had multiple serial killers at work. You had Son of Sam, you had Richard Cottingham, and then on the West Coast, you had the Hillside Stranglers, you had the Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. You had and in this case, Rodney Alcala was actually picked up and questioned as being one of the Hillside Stranglers when he was a totally different. He was a serial killer, but he wasn't a Hillside Strangler. So at that point, he was released and continued.
What does that tell you, man? What does that tell? That tells you that there's that many serial killers active between the 60s and the 80s in the United States of America, that they're stopping serial killers and thinking that they're other serial killers. What does that tell you? That doesn't tell you that there's a societal issue. There's a definite policing issue there. And the fact that I mean, Man, you just look at Jeffrey Dahmer being stopped by the cops. They don't even check his boot. He's
Right.
drinking. It's like, what are we doing here?
You had, I mean, with Dahmer, you had, um, at the time, homosexuality was, looked at, if not outright illegal, certainly, you know, um, largely immoral. And so when the police saw that, oh, look, this is a homosexual domestic, we're not getting involved in this. So,
In the 70s, homosexuality was illegal in Las Vegas and LA. It was illegal to be a homosexual in the 70s, I believe, because how I know that, there's a guy on YouTube, he's called Feature Man,
Mhm.
and he was convicted in the 70s for molesting 14-year-old boys that were in child haven, that were like orphans or something. And he tried to say that he was convicted for being a homosexual because it was illegal, because back then homosexuality, bestiality and pedophilia were lumped into the same bracket as a crime against nature in the west coast of the United States. I believe in some states, I could be wrong about the states. And he tried to pawn off as that he was convicted of being a homosexual, but when people of YouTube looked into his convictions list, they found out that he was not convicted of being a homosexual at the time. He was convicted of for molesting 14-year-old boys, and he lost 100,000 subscribers. He's still on YouTube active right now, making money off YouTube. I've sent YouTube all the relevant information in this guy, and they refuse to take him down, even though he's a convicted pedophile. So, these are the type of people that roamed back then, that targeted young boys, just the amount of rapists alone. But I do believe that homosexuality was illegal in the United States. I think it was in the early 70s,
Yeah,
I
and
believe.
well, in New York, you could be arrested for dressing as the opposite gender. In other words, males could not go out dressed in female garments. So drag queens were consistently arrested, harassed. Um, a lot of drag artists, performers were arrested. It was really a terrible time. Um,
It
and
was like the anti woke time. It was the real, like today we've got another side where it's like promoted in schools, but back then you were actually being
right,
arrested for a male dressing. And like, for me personally, I don't give a fuck. Like, if a geezer comes, like there was a fellow the other day in Belfast, he was wearing a full dress, pink dress, long hair and a beard. And we were in the shop, and I was getting something from the shop, and I says, hello, sorry, do you want to go in front of me? And like, I didn't treat him any different. Like, to me,
right.
it doesn't make a difference. But that there was a weirdness with America at the time. And it's just, do you know what I feel, Sean, when it comes to guys like Richard Cottingham, the serial killer? It's like, if these guys were able to express themselves, maybe some sexually, who they were, maybe these people would have been trans, or maybe there would have been some different expression of what a human is, a normal human is. They mightn't have been a serial killer. Today people are allowed to express themselves a lot more, and
Yeah,
there's less serial killers, and maybe that's the change of the times actually help people express themselves a lot more, and then the violence within subsided, and they didn't need to kill. Because Richard Cottingham, to have possibly over 100 victims,
mhm,
um, to me, there has to be either you're a sexual sadist and you're just a sadist getting the gratification of hurting others and the sexual gratification of hurting others, or you've got an inner demon, metaphorically, religiously, whatever way you want to say it, that needs to be expressed. And maybe today, because you can express that, that's why there's less serial killers, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. I mean, to a degree, I think that could certainly lessen the number of um, serial offenders, but not a guy like Cottingham. He was, he just liked to kill. There were some, again, uh, I reference Richard Ramirez's quote so many times, but he said, killing is killing, whether it's done for duty, profit, or fun. Some of these guys, they were just killers. The psychopathy presents itself in many different ways. Sometimes a psychopath can be a CEO, and sometimes he can be a serial killer. Sometimes he can be, a world class athlete. Sometimes, it all.
OJ Simpson. Look at OJ Simpson. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Um, anyone who has that drive and that um, lack of empathy to where they can step on the guy under them to get to the next level in business or the entertainment world, sports, whatever, that's psychopathy too. So to say every psychopath is a killer, that's not true. But um, Richard Cottingham, he excelled at his job. He was a master manipulator. He yeah, he had the gift of gab. He could talk his way in and out of situations. um but I want to talk about his change in modus operandi, where
And
he
his
went.
evolution, the
Yeah,
way I want to term this here, because I want to clip this part for the Serial Killing Minds channel.
okay.
What then is MO? But we'll talk about his MO and his evolution throughout his killings, the series of killings, because we'll have the first killing, but what was his evolution from throughout his span of killing? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, yeah, he so he, like I said, he was a sort of a killer of opportunity, where wherever things came together and he was of a mind to act on his predatory nature, he did it. Now, when he moved, well, he didn't move his residence, but his um, employment, brought him to the city, big city, where he has sees all of the sort of Sodom and Gomorrah of Times Square, the sex shops, the sex workers, um, and he goes to the sex clubs, and he loves it. He can act out his domination, his bondage fantasies. He can act them out, but eventually that's not enough. So he starts taking sex workers back to hotels in New York and New Jersey. Well, the reason they called him the torso killer is because he would cut off the hands and head of his victims to hinder the investigation, to hinder identification of the victim. But he didn't stop there. He set the entire crime scene on fire, and then he left. So he left the bodies burning, the hotel room burning, you know. Um, and what happened was the firefighters, police, emergency response teams got to the first scene relatively quickly. They were able to um, uh, procure some items of clothing from before they were burned up. So one enterprising young detective decided to put these clothes on mannequins and photograph them and put those pictures out to the public and say, look, do these outfits look at all familiar to you? Do
Very
you know
smart.
anyone
Very,
who
very
does
smart thing.
this? Yes, yes. And it worked. So they were able to um, get some names, put some faces to these victims. Um, but Richard Cottingham saw what happened. So what did he do? The next time he took the clothes with him, you know? So by tipping their hand and showing their methodology, which is a double edged sword, okay, it helped. They were able to identify these victims, but they also showed Richard Cottingham how they're working, how they're um, proceeding. So he was able to alter his modus operandi to circumvent. See, it's like a chess game again. They make a move, he makes a move. They make a move, he makes a move. And it's going to
Did
play out.
he then get? Did he get like his kicks from this? That he was playing with the cops? That he
Yes,
was like,
yeah, they
for
all
me,
do.
like,
They
what's the
all do.
cops? What is a cop supposed to do? He's a young cop. He's a new detective. He comes in. He says, "Look, we're going to put these clothes on the mannequins to see if we'll flag like a victim's family, and we can maybe get a lead this way." And then this guy goes, "Well, I'm watching the news. I'm just going to take the clothes with me." So, I mean, you can't really keep up with that. You know,
You can't because
I can't blame the cop for that, can we?
no,
Basically,
you can't because you have to you have to do these things in order to make progress. Um, in the BTK case, they were faced with how much do we release? Do we release enough to say, look, we're trying to keep our community safe, but we also don't want to let the killer know what we know, So again, it's such a fine line that the investigating agencies have to walk because any slip to one side or the other, they're going to spook the offender to where he maybe packs up and moves to another city and becomes someone else's problem, or he alters his modus operandi to the degree where he doesn't any longer resemble that killer. So what do you do? You know,
yeah.
you know,
I was just looking on Rumble there. There's a few viewers on Rumble. So guys, listen, if you're watching in Rumble and you want to get involved in a live chat, head over to at Serial Killing Minds and join us in the live chat right now. That's on YouTube, or just use the link in the description because I know there's a few people watching in Rumble. There always is. I cannot put your comments on the screen. StreamYard doesn't allow me to do that, so apologies. And just to answer Emma's question, I'm not ignoring anybody in the chat. I premiered this live for 9 o'clock this morning, a.m., and it was supposed to be p.m., and people were tuning in or coming into my live chat. So I'm an idiot. I apologize about that. I wouldn't be talking about anything like this at 9 o'clock in the morning when people are doing the school run. So I apologize about that. So back to what you were saying, Sean, right? So his MO, his evolution, it has went from a random sadistic rape
right.
sadist type action to
Mhm.
now working with the police, not working with the police, but in this chess game with the cops where he's watching the news, he's reading the newspapers. You can't tell me, Sean, that this guy wasn't getting his kicks from from
No,
him being
he was.
infamous.
He was,
He had to have been.
he was also talking about it at work. Like I said, his coworker. There was no love lost between the two. The guy who worked, I guess what you would call the next cubicle to Richard. He kind of had, I don't know. Maybe he thought Richard was a little flashy, coming in talking about the Hellfire Club, Plato's Retreat, all these sexual escapades. And these guys know that Richard is a family man, married, has children, things of that nature. So
I
he could.
heard he was a Freemason. I've seen a TikTok video, hasn't been confirmed. There's only one video that he was a member of the Freemasons. Is that, can you confirm or deny that?
I have not seen that anywhere, but
I seen one TikTok video, and it was Richard Cottingham, in a Masonic cult. But it was, once again, could be just some dickhead looking for a few views. But
yeah,
anyway, regardless of that, there. So
it
then
doesn't
we're,
fit, it doesn't fit into his lifestyle. I don't see him
yeah, I
as
don't, I don't really see that either. But listen, what does it matter anyway? So the thing about it is, right, when you've got a guy like this here, so his span of killing from the mid '60s to the mid '80s, what time? I'm sure. How many?
Killing,
So you've got two solid decades of killings,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in that time frame, just say there, hypothetically speaking, we said that there's possibly 100. Now, before I asked you this next question. Would you say comfortably that this guy's got 100 victims?
Yeah, I think it's possible.
Okay. So he's got 100. Possible that we'll say we'll be generous to him here.
Cooling off period was not it wasn't a long like months.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's my next question to you. So
and he would also kill multiple victims in one episode. He would get two sex workers, take them back to a hotel, and kill them both. He
really.
Yeah, so he was up in the numbers in multiple ways.
So that's my question then. So you've got 2 decades, which is a long time for a sadist serial killer to be active. Now, we're going to be generous to him here, and we're not going to say 100 victims, even though we know that there is. We're going to say 50, right? So to kill 50 people in 20 years and not be caught, to me, that is absolutely astonishing. Did he just target sex workers, or what was the sort of the pattern in regards to his victims?
That's what I was getting at. At the beginning, his early victims, they were, housewives, moms, just, ladies who you would see at the grocery store who would, I don't remember exactly their occupations, but I think one of them was maybe a substitute teacher. One of them was someone that he went to school with. So he had no sort of hands off. He would kill acquaintances. Some people that may have the one woman that he killed probably considered him a friend. They went to school together. They knew one another. And he
that's sick, man, because look, I can't be a hypocrite here. And by the way, there's Jay's in the chat. Listen, Jay, I'm doing a bit of a podcast here, mate. If you want to contact me on Instagram, we can even have a phone call tomorrow. I'm not ignoring you, mate, if that's what you think. But to stay on the topic here, I can't be a hypocrite and be more outraged that this guy is targeting your average American sweetheart woman, because to me, every life is the same. So the sex worker on the street, her life is just as valuable as the lady who's got the family that he's targeting, that he's stalking in a shopping mall somewhere. So for me personally,
that's what he did. It's funny that you should say that, because that's what he did early on, was sort of the shopping mall, grocery store, and he would force them into their cars, or sometimes, like I said, they even trusted him enough to get in a car with him or let him in their car. And these are the crimes that are recently coming to light. Um, when he was apprehended, he was just known as the Times Square Ripper, the Torso Killer, the Madman of Times Square. It wasn't until recently that he has been seen in this light of a totally different kind of offender. Almost um, less organized offender who became a hyper organized offender. Um,
How
you
is
know,
that even possible, Sean? Because me and you speak behind the scenes, right? Like, see, that is a podcast in itself. The conversation me and Sean have after this lasts for an hour, and that is the podcast. We should do like a Patreon or something, and charge like, I don't know, like £1 or something for people to listen in, because that's the real shit. And one of the things that we speak about is organized to disorganized serial killers, right? And how can somebody, because I think this is an enigma, this is a rare case. We've gotten Richard Cottingham here. How does a guy go from sporadic, random, unorganized, like literally, to then evolving into a very sophisticated, organized killer who knows how to stalk and then maybe has a particular type of victim? How does that even work out? How does he do that?
um, well, I like someone watching mentioned Todd Colehep. Uh, he is actually one of the serial killers that I've been speaking to for the past 3 years. He is a person who is an organized serial killer who started out organized and stayed that way. With um, Richard, you have a guy who started so young that uh, maybe he just had these urges to kill, but didn't have the means, for one, to have his own. He's living at home with his parents at this point in time. So you have to look at the full picture. When he gets married, when he moves into his own house, when he gets his own job, all these other doors, all these other avenues open to him. Now he can, pursue his own sort of sexual deviancy, his
Are
own.
we talking about Todd here,
No,
or
we're talking about Richard. I just mentioned
Richard? Yeah,
Todd
yeah.
because,
Yeah, we'll do Todd next. How about this here? We'll talk about Todd next Thursday. That's the one
yeah,
that we'll do next Thursday, because if you have
okay.
correspondence with that serial killer, then it would be interesting,
Well,
especially if one of the
yeah,
viewer.
since he just wrote a book, I thought
Yeah,
it would be interesting to talk about him.
yeah. So listen, Emma. We'll do. As Sean says, he's had correspondence. He's talked to Todd before, and Sean, we'll
I
do
talk
one
to him
next
on
week.
a regular basis. I talk to him at least once, probably twice a month. I get letters from him. But yeah, Richard, I think he evolved into an organized offender because he had the means to do so. He was making great money. He had a cover. He was in the city. His home was not in the city. His home was in the suburbs. So he was able to have a sort of compartmentalized life by design. He
Hmm.
was able to do that, and that afforded him, um, you know, um, more opportunities, access to more victims. He didn't have to just go to the shopping area, wait for someone, maybe carrying packages, force them into their car, you know, sexually assault them, strangle them, and leave them there. You know, that's kind of the definition of a disorganized offender, you know, but that's how he had to engage that um that darkness inside of him. That's um that's what he, let's say, had available to him. As he progressed, so did other aspects of his life, his employment, his marital status, his living situation. All these things changed, and they all presented more opportunities for him to elevate his killing.
It's like
And
as his killing got more sophisticated, and I don't want to say better, right? But as it got more sophisticated and it evolved, his life actually evolved. It was like this guy was never the victim of bad karma. What,
right.
he's like the proof that karma doesn't exist, because what he put out was murder, rape, and torture and sadism. But actually, he received goodness, wealth, and a healthy life back. And it's like some may say, like, the conspiracy theories about Richard is he's like your sweet old grandpa looking guy that. I've seen one TikTok video where the guy was talking about him, and he says that like this guy worshipped the devil. He sold his soul to the devil. This is why he had such a good life. And what the killings that he done were like sacrifices to the devil and shit. I don't think it was that. I think he was able to what's that the correct word? I can't say that because of my accent. Compartmentalize
Yeah,
his life in two sections. Like, he was one person. He was this entity that was just a raping, killing machine, but then on the other side he was actually a sweet husband.
right.
And he was actually, I think, I don't want to speak out of turn here, I don't want to be getting the two guys mixed up, but I think he was a good father to his
Yes,
kids.
he
I
was.
believe.
He was,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
and
that's fucked up,
he
man.
stayed. He stayed uh that person, well, as long as he could. He shielded his family from the media for as long as he could. His children, um, they found out. You know, he didn't sort of say, "Look, I'm a serial killer. This is what I did. This is what you know how I did it." He sort of quietly said, "Yes, I did this. I accept this."
Sort of like, I'm embarrassed. Yeah,
He
yeah. Listen,
never
yeah, it
uttered
was
one.
me. It was me. Yeah, it was me. It's like
Right,
somebody finding out that I'm a troll. Like, I'm running like 3 accounts on YouTube. You caught me. It was me.
right,
Yeah, I was doing a bit of troll, and I says that you are ugly, or yeah, it was me. You caught me. Like,
right,
no,
right,
mate. You're a sus. You've just killed. You're going to be convicted on 18 murders, and we think that you've killed 100 more, like 100 more people. What is going on here? This isn't a gotcha moment. This is, what the fuck, mate. What have you been doing for your life? And that is the key question with Richard. And I don't want to go back to this. I just
right.
want to say this, and maybe if you want to elaborate, that's fine. But
Yeah,
for me personally, the key question is in all of this, especially when it comes to Richard. Okay, you can be a sadist, you can be all those things. You can maybe be a sadist, you have maybe 1 or 2 victims. But for me, the question is to possibly have over 100 victims. The key question in all of this, Sean, is why?
right,
Why?
right. Now,
Why?
who can answer that? Him, Richard. He's the only person that can tell us, you know, um, beyond any speculative, theories, beyond any hypotheses. He can tell us, but he won't, because he's a narcissistic, sadistic, sexual sadist. He's not going to give us the answers that we as a society want to know. We want to know what that monster under the bed looks like, what that monster hiding in the closet looks like. But you know what? The monster's not going to expose itself in the light of day. It's going to come out in the shadows. It's going to come out at night, and any glimpse that he gives us into that shadow world is going to be under his strict control. He's
Have
not.
you had any correspondence with Richard yourself over the
I
time?
wrote to Richard two, maybe 3 years ago, I guess during the COVID um, uh, pandemic. I kind of reached out to some, kind of like a sort of like a dream team list of serial killers that I would love to have contact with. And he was one of them. And I knew going in that he doesn't answer mail. Same with Edmund Kemper, but I wrote both of them anyway. No, I'm fully expecting no reply and getting no reply. Um, you know, um, if you watch an interview with Richard Cottingham, and this is I'm going to, paraphrase him. This isn't verbatim, but what he said is along the lines of, and he said this to the detectives who were interviewing him. He said, of all the serial killers out there, of all the serial killers you've interviewed, there are no other serial killers like me. So he
So,
places himself not only above, us as regular members of society. um, he places himself above the media, above the police, but he also places himself above, his sort of, de facto brethren, which are the other serial killers, and he, I mean, that's narcissistic to the degree of, you know, just not even accepting the fact that you're a criminal, I mean, a lot of people have problems with uh, equating serial killers with what they really are, which is criminals. Murder is a crime, it's against the law.
but
These
it's
guys,
like it's like a taboo thing because no, it's not taboo. It is what it is. It's a criminal act. But for instance, what gets me with a lot of serial killers, if you look into the psychology of it, there is a deep. There's studies proven with this why women like serial killers. So me and Sean speak about serial killers because we think it's fucked up. He speaks to them because he thinks it's fucked up, and it comes from a subsection of society. If you're into like the goth thing, it's probably appealing, but we're not sitting here sexually attracted to serial killers. But there is, when you look at serial killers, right, there's, when they go to prison, they have more access to females in prison
oh,
because for
I mean,
some reason there is a gene with some women that they love this, the
it's the
what's the
ultimate bad boy thing,
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not
It's
like,
reality. It's evil. They like that sense of danger, and that comes from, that's a primitive thing in women. We all like to be woke these days, and feelings and all that bullshit. But realistically, though, when it boils down to it, a lot of women like these serial killers because of the danger and the sadism, and it drives their hormones to the point where they feel compelled to even have children with them. Look at Ted Bundy, and I think that's what it is essentially. I went by your question there, or what you were speaking about, but essentially that's what it is. It's a weird thing, and the reality is it's primitive. These are predators, and back in the day, there was predators. It's in our DNA to be predatory to some degree. We subdue that in this modern day society, but in reality, whenever we get a glimpse of what it was like back in the day when we're running about fucking with cheetahs running after us and shit, that drives the hormones in women, and they're attracted to that, and that's why a lot of women are attracted to serial killers. That's what
well,
I believe anyway.
um, going back to Todd Colehep. I talked to him a lot, and he's in prison in South Carolina, and the guards hate him because he gets boxes of mail. They literally have to deliver boxes of mail to his cell. Um, he and he is not he's not like a handsome guy. He's huge. He's a big guy. But he's not like, I mean, you could see how certain ladies might find Ted Bundy attractive, or Jeffrey Dahmer, or even Richard Ramirez. But you know um, it goes beyond the physical attractiveness of the person. It's
100%, man. I'd believe
the
attraction.
notoriety, the infamy, the
Yeah, the
danger.
attraction, the physical, the look of somebody is only like 50% of it. You have guys, I know guys that are fucking super, like, not good looking guys. They're not really well put together in their life. I don't really judge anybody, but you get what I'm saying. And they
Yeah,
have women flooding them because they are dangerous. They're dangerous men, and women like. I'm not saying all women. I'm not generalizing all women, but a lot of women like dangerous men. So listen, Sean, I've got a react. We want to do a bit of a reaction. This is one of the interviews with Richard. So detectives interrogate vicious murder Richard Cottingham, the torso killer. Do you want to do a bit of a reaction video to his one of his recent interviews?
yeah. This is actually one of his most recent interviews. These two detectives here that are speaking to him, they're cold case detectives, and they have really put in some hours with Richard, and they they've closed a couple cases, but it seems like for every step forward they take, they get knocked back too.
Is this worth reacting to? Is there anything in this worth reacting to?
Uh, this particular clip here, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this I think is after the first uh, case that he confessed to, and the judge was supposed to just sentence him to another life sentence. This judge took it upon himself to berate Richard, and that is the worst thing you can do to a narcissist. So Richard said, "That's the last time I'll ever do this. You will never get another confession out of me. I'm not going to do this again." And I believe that this is after the court appearance.
Yeah, you have to honey dick these guys. Like, you have to go in, give them cigarettes, buy them KFC,
Oh,
and say, "Oh, mate, here's when you come. Here's a couple of dollars to fucking buy yourself some commissary. Yeah, don't worry about it, mate. Listen, you're fine. You're a handsome dude. You sort of have to honey dick them just to extract information from these
well,
guys."
they went further than that. They would bring him down for the weekend to their local county lockup. They would
Wow.
have like poker night, where it would be
Oh my god.
Cottingham and a bunch of detectives playing poker, eating pizza, having a cocktail. Everything that he wanted that he couldn't get in jail, and some things that he wanted, like he wanted a subscription to TV Guide. Simple
What?
enough. Yeah, simple enough. They get him a subscription to TV Guide, and now they say, "Look, Richard, we've given you everything you've asked for. Now it's time for you to give us something. Tell
So yeah,
us, you
yeah.
know."
So basically, what we're about to watch here, right? So Richard has went through a span of killings. He's in prison in this interview and what they're trying to do here. They know that he's probably committed about 70, maybe, about 70 more murders.
Yeah,
And
right here at this point, they have, I think, 16 cold cases that
wow.
he's connected to. So
16 cold cases that he has. They have maybe what's that type of
DNA. They have,
DNA?
yeah,
Wow.
it's all forensic evidence, not circumstantial. These are cases that he is most assuredly connected to.
Here, do you know what? Me, Melissa, and Sean and Emma, get us in the room with one of these guys, and we'll fucking give them a couple of tins of coke, and we'll get all the information out of them. Listen, so what we're going to do is, right, we're going to react to this now. I'm very interested to actually listen to him. I've never seen this one before, so I want to actually get Sean's opinion on this, because obviously Sean speaks to serial killers. He knows them in depth. He knows their psychology. So while I've got Sean here, I will play this clip. This is going to be a reaction video, so we will be talking throughout it just to make sure there's no copyright issues. We're going to speak maybe every 20 to 30 seconds or whenever. So I'll play this now just to get Sean's initial reaction. Let me know in the chat if you can hear this okay.
1 or 2 years. What do you think? How far back? 67. 60, maybe the end of 66. 67.
He's talking about his
A lot of years of running around.
first killing.
Out of state still. Yeah.
So that's him saying 67, 66. That's whenever I first started killing.
And he also, I don't know if you caught it, but he also said, they said that's a lot of years of running around. And he said, and a lot of states. So that right there tells you that not all of his victims are going to be in the New York, New Jersey area.
Wow, man, that's messed up. Yeah, you good catch on that one, Sean. I missed that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a number in your head that you think? Did you ever sit back and think about it? It's safe to say I actually couldn't count that high. They start to get jumbled. I would say there's well over 80. You think that many? Well over.
Well over 80.
Yeah.
Like, let's just react to what we've just heard there. He has just said well over 80, so he's confirming to them. Well over 80 to me is 100, right? So so you could say 120. So we're going to say 100 here. Well over 80 could be 100, right? So let's round this off. The man, that is mental. That is like, that's Santa Claus the serial killer right there. Like, that is crazy shit, man. I don't even.
Well over 80. That's not saying, 81, 82. Like you said, that's 100.
Man, I don't even know how to react to that.
I done some in Florida, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Baltimore.
That's my hometown.
I was just about to say that. So Sean is from Baltimore. So like, you listening to what you had to say there about in past podcasts that we've done. When it comes to Baltimore, there's some areas of Baltimore, going by what you said, that's very, very sort of deprived in a way that serial killings can maybe be overlooked as just like, fuck it. Yeah, we're not. Back then, it was probably not even investigated. So this guy, like Connecticut, I don't know what Connecticut was like. I know Connecticut's a bit of a shithole. People have been telling me.
Well, Connecticut has it does have its sort of oppressed areas, but Connecticut also has its very well-to-do areas. That's where Rob Zombie is from. His wife Sherry Moon Zombie is also from Connecticut. So
would it be right in saying that Richard Cottingham maybe picked areas that were sort of not of, high wealth, and in the hopes
Baltimore is you could be in an extremely white collar, upper class neighborhood. Literally walk 2 blocks and buy heroin right on the street. So Baltimore it's so small that it's like if you had taken New York and put it in a car crusher and condensed it down to um, 1/10 of its size, where you need a cab to go from one part of New York to the other. You can walk from one end of Baltimore to the other in 45 minutes.
So it's
And
a bit maybe like the size of Belfast over here, maybe a bit smaller than that actually, because it would take you a bit. You mean the inner city or the outskirts included?
no, I'm saying the inner city.
Yeah, so like maybe a bit like Belfast, then maybe a little bit bigger, but
Well,
that's pretty.
and the
That's messed up,
part
man.
that I would think that attracted Cottingham is we have a part of Baltimore that's quite similar to the old Times Square in New York, except that we call it the Block, and it's famous for prostitution, strippers, drugs, and the funny thing is, the police precinct is on the same street. So uh, and it was actually famous for some of the famous strippers of the day, like Blaze Star, um, some of the famous burlesque dancers of the 50s and 60s who actually became, uh, famous for doing, taking their show on the road. A lot of them ended up in Baltimore, but my aunt actually worked with Blaze Star at one of the bars on the block, and you know, uh,
That's pretty
I
cool.
never made any
That's pretty cool,
secrets
man.
about the kind of family I come from. So
No, man, you've got a wild genetic strain through you where you're just like rife in music and like celebrities and stars and shit, and then you know what I mean. And then there's yourself, who's speaking to these infamous people in prison, the serial killers. What we'll do is we will react to another couple of minutes of this here,
okay,
and then we'll go back because I really want to sort of dive into the latter stages of his serial killing career.
okay,
Since that was not connected to me, I was right. My whole thing was not to make a pattern, which I never did. And never to try to kill him the exact same way or to, leave a signature.
there you go.
I wasn't stupid,
When it comes to interview and interrogation techniques, when it came down to someone like Richard Cottingham, the rules like kind of all went out the window. Bringing him in and reading him his Miranda rights and using investigation.
Yeah, I wasn't a serial killer. No,
If you just told me you think you killed over 80, that fits the definition pretty well.
no, it doesn't.
But I know what you said, because you've told me in the past. There's been many more that you let go.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
I didn't go out to kill somebody. Most anyone I killed was when I would be somehow connected to them, and I didn't want to get caught. It was more than just not getting caught. Just thinking.
Very interesting, Sean. What's your take on that? He doesn't consider himself a serial killer, and
Right.
he said that he let hundreds of people go. And on there's three things I want to react to. And he said that he felt a connection to his victims.
Yeah.
Like that's so he's not. He says that he's not a serial killer. What does he mean by that? How do you dissect that, and what is your opinion on that? That have you ever, when speaking to serial killers in jail, do they ever say to you, "I'm not a serial killer"?
No. Most of the most of the killers that I talk to are like Todd is very, very much into being a serial killer. I mean, he views it as being a celebrity. You know, he's very, very comfortable with the term serial killer. He's very, um, uh, I mean, he has a strange sort of pride in what he's done. He looks at the victims that he chose as less dead, as if he had taken out the garbage, as he said on numerous occasions. Um, you know, he, you know, he looks at what he did as almost a service to society. Whereas I think Richard saying, like I told you before, you know, he views himself as above that. Um, you know, I think he thinks of serial killers as, um, you know, David Berkowitz or Jeffrey Dahmer, you know, guys that he looks at as deranged, even though
Scum of society, scum of society. Basically, Richard Cottingham holds himself as very, very high esteem. Then,
yes, he's a narcissist to the I mean, to the degree that you will be hard pressed to find someone more narcissistic.
like, I look at his face there, and the guy, okay, he's an older guy. You can tell he's lived a very, very good life with food, with the way, like, it doesn't look like he's lived a very stressful life. So to me, that is a talent sign. Like, you've got people out there that are like 30 years of age and they look like they're 60, and they just lived a very hard life. For me, a guy like this was able to kill very comfortably and be the ultimate predator, as in it was just like breathing to him. And as you know, just to react to something that he said there, Sean, he said that he had a connection to his victims. Is
Yeah.
that a common thing amongst serial killers?
No, that's not you know, not at all. That's in fact that's a rarity, uh you know, Bundy, he chose victims that reminded him of his ex. Um and then you had a guy like Gary Ridgway who, you know, didn't care of uh you know, race, appearance, age, you know, as long as they were female. You know, the same with Joel Rifkin. You know, he would, you know, oftentimes he would visit the same sex worker 10 times, and maybe the 11th time he kills her, you know. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, it's just an individual thing, but um, you know, it's not the norm. Richard Cottingham is an outlier, like
Mm-hmm.
BTK. You know, these guys are in a class of their own. You know, and that's not just because of, you know, the hellacious body counts. That's because of their modus operandi, their means and motive of operation, their
Mm-hmm.
reasons for killing. You know, their victimology, their everything is singular. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're about as um, much of a collective as you can put Richard Cottingham in, is that
Mm-hmm.
he is an organized offender. Beyond that, you know,
And
uh,
evolved. Let's actually say it
yeah,
how it is. He was a random, unorganized that evolved into this sophisticated, organized serial killer. Something that we
yeah,
could never imagine, to the point where he's got triple digit numbers on
yeah.
his, like, it's just admitted there. So, like, just on a side note though, Emma's mentioned Chris Watts. I don't want to get into the Chris Watts stuff. We'll talk about Chris Watts on
I
on
hate
a separate night. I
Chris
just need
Watts.
So sorry, but just to
To
let
me,
you know
Chris
though.
Watts is human garbage.
No, he is. But listen, there is a theory here. Listen, I just want to let you know. I didn't really want to speak about this too much because it hasn't really been confirmed. The information, it never really will be. But round about that time, like whenever these situations happen, I always try to contact the people in the area because they know what the crack is. It's not just the journalists. The journalists know really fuck all.
I think his neighbor was the one who put the nail in his coffin when
Well,
he.
I actually got in contact with a girl who lived not a couple of doors down, but she was in the neighborhood round about the time this happened. I got in contact with this lady on Twitter. I'm not going to say her name. I'm not going to release any messages. I'm not going to talk about that. And she, in the future, she might be coming on, but she has some stories. And one thing I'll say to you is, right, one thing that the narrative of Chris Watson needed to be packed away very tightly. So one of the questions I asked this woman was, how can a man go from not killing anybody to killing his whole family? And she says, well, Ronan, because he has killed before. This guy,
I can believe that.
this guy has killed before in other states.
Anybody who travels social media like Chris Watts did and meets someone and marries them on social media, this is a guy who has no roots. This is a guy who can freely move about like a shark and kill and move on and kill and move on and kill and move on until he's caught. And
well, she said he doesn't have a massive body count. She doesn't believe that.
I don't think that, but I think that I think there are more victims out there.
But with the information she gave me, right, she was in close vicinity with him. It's at times. I'm not going to give away locations or any of that. I just want to say this lady was in close vicinity to Chris Watts, and she said that, not that he was a pervert. He never gave off that vibe, but whenever they were in close quarters with one another, she felt even back then, years prior to that this guy, there was something. She would never, put it this way, she would never let her kids go to birthday parties with this guy. If that guy was in the vicinity of the birthday party, she would never do that. And it was actually an open secret that not only was Chris Watts, did he have a girlfriend, another girlfriend, but he was sleeping with a few women in the area. And possible, I'm not saying this is true now, I want to establish this, the Chris Watts was accused of rape a few times in that area by other women, which was,
I could totally see that. He's one of the
mother that was murdered by him. And by the way, I'm not victim blaming here, but apparently she had not that she didn't know about the rapes, but apparently there was a few situations that she brushed off, and then she would not tell the truth to like her friends, and then she would go on social media and parade him as like this, oh, he's this really, really good father. But deep down, in reality, this, away from the Facebook life, because we know those people who have Facebook relationships, this guy, the wife apparently knew that he was capable of more terrible things before that even actually happened. And that's what was told to me. And that's why she lost a lot of friends in the neighborhood. And that's why she lost a lot of old comrades from back in the day that said, look, they warned her about him and says, look, this guy is actually, we think that he's evil because of the stories that we hear out of town that have been confirmed to us that it's him. And she just wanted the Facebook life. She wanted she put them in debt. And if you look where he worked,
she wanted to live, it's kind of above her means and kind of have the McMansion as, which is, kind of an American term for, these mansions that are kind of slapped together in these gated communities and sold for millions of dollars, but in reality, the craftsmanship is shite. The materials are shite. The whole thing is just
Well,
you know,
just to let Emma know, we'll be doing it once I confirm that information, and if I can get that lady on, I might have to protect her identity and change her voice. It might have to be a pre-recorded. She was very, very shaky speaking to me. I promised her, listen, I've sat on this information to do with Chris Watts. She does not want to speak to the media because there's other entities in the neighborhood that, put it this way, Chris's family and certain people that he was connected to are not nice people. They're not nice people. And there's, put it, what if he didn't do what he done? Just say he had just murdered the wife, he possibly could have got away with this. It's the fact that the two
Yeah.
daughters were
Right.
murdered was one of the reasons that it was that
I mean,
you know,
killing your wife is bad enough,
yeah,
but killing your two, um, I think what was one of them was still a toddler. The other one, that's just above and beyond. Look, I'm talking as a father who lost a child, and I'm telling you, I would do anything to protect my son. I would do anything that it took to keep him safe. So when I hear of a scumbag like Chris Watts killing his own children, you know,
you see, it takes a killer. It takes, for instance, you don't go from not killing anybody, right?
Mhm.
And you need to understand when it came to his lover, pardon me, I'm hearing, and it's not confirmed, that yes, she had more of a hand in that. She didn't actually say do it, but because she knew about Chris's past, about what he was capable of, and she played on that. But she didn't think that he was going to do that. She didn't think he was going to go out and murder the whole family. It just so happens that this guy was a deep, deep predator that went very, very deep, and she did play on that. And she was one of the women, his lover was one of the women that were into not predatory men, but she was into that sort of, she got her kicks from a very, very dominant male. And that was a known thing in the neighborhood, by the way.
I mean, it almost appears like she was manipulating him. She was the dominant one.
It was Bonnie and Clyde, man. It was an evil Bonnie and Clyde. They knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah.
He got a hold of some of I don't want to get crude, but he got a hold of something that he never had before, and it kind of was like a drug, like when the chemistry with someone is right, they can use, a sexual liaison can be a powerful thing,
Oh man, that's what that Chris was driven by, his sexual desires. And look, we'll talk about that.
Monogamist, he was a serial monogamist. He would have these kind of committed relationships, and then go on to the next one, and then the next one. It wasn't like he could do like a one night stand, because he was one of those guys. Like, I always found them to be like, I knew a guy that was very similar to Chris Watts, and he was in a polyamorous relationship with his wife and another woman, and he had like two families, and the guy, he was just this smarmy, it just kind of made you feel dirty just talking to him, because he was such a, just like, he looked at women as something that were there for his use, almost like disposable.
Just to move on, because what we'll do is we'll do one about Todd
how
next
did
Thursday.
we end up on Chris Watts?
No, because it was a relevant question, because we're talking about Richard, the different psychologies, and Emma brought up, and I wanted to sort of have him say that, I did have correspondence with somebody in the neighborhood who lived beside Chris Watts, who knows a lot more than than what the media is saying that possibly could come onto this channel. I have to protect her identity and change her voice and all the rest. But me and you could probably do that. But what we'll do is, though, Sean, we'll talk about Todd next Thursday, and maybe we'll do Chris Watts the Thursday after, or maybe if we want to do ramp it up to 2 lives per week, we could do something like that. We could maybe do Chris Watts next Tuesday and then Todd on Thursday.
I have to be honest with you. I haven't done an extreme deep dive on Chris Watts. I mean, I don't know that I could bring anything.
No, but man, it'll just be me and you speaking. We'll do a little bit of research, and there's things that I would like to say, and that we'll go through the timeline of the whole event, and we'll just be just sort of like a live between me and you. Do you know what I mean? And then we'll talk about your expertise on Thursday with the serial killer life.
With Todd, I can tell you,
Well, maybe you could read out one of his letters that he sent you. That would be fantastic. Or you could show us a bit what is his psychology. But to stay on Richard, though, so we want to talk about how Richard was caught. Then, so let's go through the process of how Richard Cottingham, the torso killer, was caught.
He well, like I said, the clothing was, that kind of tightened the noose around him somewhat, and brought some heat on him. Also, while these things are going on, while the crimes are going on, forensics are evolving as well. So what happens is a woman, she's an X-ray technician. He kills her and leaves her body on a parking lot of a hotel, and kind of just leaves her in a bundled heap behind a car. Well, someone spots her, and she's wearing, first of all, her husband reports her missing. They see her in her hospital scrubs, her body. So that kind of brings the police to the area that Richard is in at this point in time, but he is in the room with 2 sex workers that he's about to kill, cut off their heads and hands, and set the room on fire. Well, the police talk to the front desk. They find out that this guy left a pair of handcuffs in a room that he had rented previously, and that he's there now. So they bang on the door. Richard jumps out the window. A chase ensues. They capture him. They have the handcuffs. The girls are not unscathed. He had already started torturing them. There were, I believe, some bite marks, some face punches, a good, a little, bell ringing going on there. So these girls are, a little the worse for wear, but they did escape with their lives. However, others before them, the 18 that came before them, were not so lucky. At this time, they thought only 18. So he goes on trial for those. He's found guilty. The court case is the jury, I believe they were out for like 45 minutes. So the the prosecutor is actually going to get lunch, and he doesn't even get to get his meal. And they're like, "Hey, you got to get back to the, to the courtroom. They're about to announce the verdict." So he gets back there, guilty on all counts, 18 counts.
How long did the court case last for?
He was in jail, being held for the pre-trial hearings and motions being filed and things of that nature. I think it was a year or two before the actual trial started in earnest, but he was, just like what we're seeing now with Rex Heuermann. There's these motions that are being filed, discovery, all this.
Not only that, there's 18. They're doing them for 18 victims, and there's a lot of evidence that needs to be presented. So it makes sense, actually, if you think about that. That's actually very fast, considering the amount of victims they have to go through and for the convictions that they have to go through. On Richard,
it was a real I guess he knew. He was a smart enough man to know, look, the jig is up. What I want to keep this low key. I want to keep it as, how can you keep it low key, right? It's like Jack the Ripper being caught,
Worse than Jack the Ripper, yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, much worse, actually, when you're talking about 5 victims as opposed to possibly 100.
Yeah.
He gets, I think the total amount of time he was sentenced to originally was 460 years, I believe.
Why can't they not just say until he's not getting out?
Well, it's basically the way sentences are handed down in America. If you get 1,000 years, that's saying in a certain amount of time you're going to get a parole hearing.
Right.
They say life without the possibility of parole. That means for the rest of your natural life, you have no chance of getting out of jail. Now, when you have 460 years, you're not getting out of jail. Let's say your first parole hearing is in 90 years. You might not live to your first parole hearing. So it's all semantics.
It's probably to make a statement too. It's like that word that like phrase 400 years leaves its taste. It's like
it gives each victim and their family closure to say our daughter's life was worth 100 years, or
I definitely think for cases like this, look, I'm not barbaric. I'm against violence. But I definitely think in a case like this, if America and some states in America and some places around the world are going to have capital punishment, right? Why can't for certain cases like this?
Well, New York does that. New York at the time, there was no moratorium on capital punishment. The thing is, what a lot of these serial killers do, or anybody who is convicted of capital murder, which is first degree premeditated murder, which is the only kind of murder that carries a death sentence. Second degree murder on down, there's no death sentence. The only crimes that you can be executed for: first degree premeditated murder, kidnapping, and rape. Those crimes
what I'm trying to say is, why don't, for instance, if I was a judge and I had the ability, I would say, look, let's get the parents of the victims and let's give them the opportunity to inflict pain and have no charges brought up upon them.
Okay,
To
you're
this
talking about
this
going
guy.
back to a gladiatorial system of punishment, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but what I'm saying is that is viewed as I don't know, less civilized for some reason than
But
sticking in.
like we're gonna maybe give the lethal injection to somebody because they've done
Right,
really
that's what I'm saying.
but okay,
Murder is murder, right?
you know
Let the families get some satisfaction out of it. Is what?
yeah, that's what I sort of mean by that.
Right.
Let them do the killing. Let's not just put an injection into this guy and let him fall off to sleep and everything's hunky dory. Let the parents have
I've listened to enough victim impact statements and to know that many of these victims' families would love to take you up on your offer.
yeah, man, of course, 100%. I already know that goes without saying. Like,
many of them, bring up the idea themselves. But this is what happens. Okay, a guy, he kills 30 people. He gets caught. He goes to trial. There's forensic evidence, circumstantial evidence, witnesses, every kind of evidence against him. He can't get out of it. So what he does is he offers the one thing they don't have, and that's his confession and where the bodies are. And he'll give that to you if you take the death penalty off the table. And a lot of times they do, because they want to bring these bodies home so these parents can bury their children. And that's worth keeping a killer alive on our taxpayers' money to do so.
it's amazing to think that the crime that they commit of killing could actually be the deal that gets them off death row.
Yeah.
Do you
And
know that to me
and they
it's
bank on that. They bank on that because
yeah, it's crazy, man. That's absolutely crazy.
now what Bundy was doing was something that ended up being called bones for time. And that was he would give up the location of another body for a stay of execution. But because Bundy was sentenced in Florida to die, he was not escaping his date with the executioner. All he could do was prolong it. And what he did was say, look, you think I killed 33 people. I'm telling you, there's maybe 100 and some out there. And I know where they are. And I'll tell you, but, you got to take me there. I'll tell you, I'll give you one. And then in 2 years, I'll give you another one. Well, they got sick of playing this game. And they were like, look, we don't care how many bodies you have out there. It's time for you to die now. And that's what they did, and for
you have to, man. You have to, because there's no, because then what they're essentially doing is they're just using the system to keep themselves alive, and you can't have that. There has to be resolution to this. But as a parent, man, I would break into jail to torture the motherfucker that done that to a kid of mine. I couldn't fathom that. I would become a serial killer of serial killers. Do you know what I mean? That's the. Exactly. I'm not saying I could do that, but I'm saying that's the level of thinking. I couldn't imagine. I can't even put myself in that situation, because those people, because you see Bundy, you see Richard Cottingham, you see these people, and you hear a number like 80, you hear Bundy's, like I've got our little logo is Ted Bundy, AI made Ted Bundy with his cutting knife. And I think to myself, okay, we can glamorize these people, we can talk about them, we can get the views off them, we can even monetize them sometimes. But the reality is, these people have left destruction throughout many people's lives, and they'll never get any resolution because these narcissistic, sociopathic demons wanted to be infamous, wanted to have their own sexual gratification, wanted to do the killing because that's how they got their kicks, that's how they got their rocks off. And then there's this poor family in the background that's just lost a child to one of these dark fucking monsters. And then we have this system in the West, whether it be America or England or Ireland, that we have to go through this process and scrutinize everything. And these fuckers will actually use bodies. They've got their little kitty, as I call them, the little safe nest egg of bodies somewhere that they can use to cut a deal with the district attorney or something.
Right.
To me, after that, once you know they're not giving up any information, kneecap these motherfuckers, torture them to the point where do things that they've done to their victims, record it, fucking monetize that shit and say this is what happens to serial killers, this is what happens to you, and then send their kneecaps in a bag to their parents and say, raise your kids better, you fucking pieces of shit, because this shit doesn't work anymore. I know that's a wee bit extreme, that's a bit fucking tyrannical in itself, but I can't. I'm trying to put myself in the mind of one of the parents. I couldn't imagine it. It would just be. It would be surreal. It would be absolutely surreal. And then you've got Ted Bundy having children in the prison. That's even a more salt in the wounds. This fucker's able to kill children, people's children, and then he's able to go into prison and have children. Man, you know what? You know, that isn't justice. No matter what you do, that isn't justice. Allowing that fucker to have kids wasn't justice.
Well, he didn't have a conjugal visit. You know, this was one guard who was paid off to allow this liaison to take place. You know, and that's what happened. You know, see, the thing about it is, you know, if you want to take a guy and say, okay, you know, you killed children, so we're gonna now kill you in a brutal way, you know, like say somebody like Anatoliana Priyanka, who would just walk into a person's house with a high-powered rifle and just kill the entire family.
Is that the Terminator that we were speaking about?
Yes, that's the Terminator.
It's the like, man, you told me that, and I don't mean to laugh, and I've got a sixth sense of humor, but me and Sean were speaking the other day, and he says there's a serial killer called the Terminator that just, what he does, he just comes in with a loaded weapon into somebody's, like, I'm laughing, but I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm glamorizing it in my head, like this geezer coming in, busting through your door with an AR-15 locked and loaded, just shooting people and then walking out, getting into his car and going to fucking McDonald's. That shit's messed up, man.
No car. He just
walking off like the Terminator. Like, is his nickname as a serial killer the Terminator?
Terminator, yeah. It's his real name.
Me, man. Like, what's going on here?
And he's you know, he's one of the most brutal killers of all time. He didn't torture or tie up or rape or anything. He just came in and just devastation in his wake.
What was his choice of weapon?
A high-powered rifle, you know.
So the AR-15, AK-47,
M16. He had them all.
Ooh.
He had them all.
See those M16 bullets, man? They're fucking.
One strapped to his back and one in his hands, you know. So this
motherfucker busts in through your door with a loaded weapon, doesn't even need to reload because he's got one on his back and he's gunning down people. Does he choose? Like, do you know what, right? We're actually getting into the Terminator here, right? Well, do you know, for a Christmas special, we'll talk about the Terminator, right? We'll do the Christmas special.
You don't want him coming down your chimney. You don't want Anatoliana Priyanka coming down.
Jesus Christ. Happy Christmas, motherfuckers. But look, I'm not glorifying that, but that ain't personal. That's
No,
not personal. That's not going up and raping some poor woman or doing that something to a child. It's not personal. That's
well,
just him
he
being a
killed children. He did kill children, but he didn't torture them. He just, it all depended who was in the house. It
so
was
he
like
just seen a house, made a beeline, locked and loaded. Right, baby, let's go
kicked
in,
the
and we're
door
just gonna
in
go
and
ham
just
here. Like,
unloaded.
I don't mean to laugh, and I'm not laughing. I feel bad for
And
laughing,
you
but
should look at a picture of him. He looks like a warrior of the wasteland. He's like, I mean, full trench coat, um, just
fuck
just like
me. Like, what are we doing here? Like,
he looks like a villain from a friggin' Batman movie.
the Terminator, man, like the Terminator. Right, so that's going to be our Christmas special. The one before Christmas will be about the Terminator. I have to know about this guy. I mean, the fact that there isn't a movie made about this guy,
There's so many that have so. I mean, everybody talks about Bundy, Ramirez, BTK, but I'm telling you, the Israel Keys, Anatoly Anapriyanko, um, the Andre Chikatilo. These guys are so much more twisted and interesting than the ones who captured the American imagination during what we call the golden age of serial killers. Um, you had uh, the Hillside Stranglers, guys like that. They did terrible things, but you look at the Polish and the Austrian and the Russian serial killers. These guys were brutal. I mean, brutal.
there
And
was Yaka. What do you call him? I forget his name. Was it Yaka Akbar or something? He was the Pakistani serial killer with the most documented with the most documented victims. He's got documented like over 100 victims.
there's
Documented.
South American, a Mexican serial killer was just apprehended during COVID. He was best friends with the sheriff's wife. He killed her and buried her under his floor. And the sheriff came looking for her, suspected that he killed her, and found her. But he didn't just find her, he found like 30 skeletal remains, human remains, under
Are
this
these
guy.
motherfuckers not afraid about ghosts? The one thing that strikes me about serial killers, right, is that they're not afraid of ghosts, right? I mean, like, I don't mean that in a joke way, but like, whenever I go into a new house, I get it blessed because this is Ireland, and every square inch of land, some cunt's been slaughtered. So I know that the house that I'm in right now, there's definitely about at least 3 dead
Well,
bodies
I mean,
because it's the land that we
look
live
at
on.
the
It's so small,
cases
the island.
of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Look at all of their cases. I mean, they're so well documented. Anybody that can read their case history and still deny the existence of a spiritual or a demonic realm, to me, that's just like, looking at the sky and saying, that's red, that's not blue.
And
I
just
mean,
actually to end on this, Sean, I want to get your opinion on this here because we're going to get a little bit wacky here, right? Just to end on this because it's coming up to the 2 hour mark, and I've enjoyed this one. I'm not going to lie to you. Fucking once again, mate. We don't appreciate you enough here. Like, we need to appreciate your knowledge here. In your personal opinion, right? Obviously, some of these are just psychotic whack jobs that fucking don't have a sense of reality. But is there a sense that some of these I've just watched a thing where I've just watched an exorcism yesterday of a young girl. It hasn't hit the fucking papers, it hasn't hit YouTube, and this motherfucker was possessed. This woman was possessed, and there was a priest standing over her extracting a demon from this woman. This woman was 100% possessed by a demon. Is it possible that some of these serial killers have been possessed by some demonic entity, in your opinion? If you believe in such a thing.
Absolutely. I think that I mean, people take it the wrong way when I say, have favorite serial killer. And I guess it does sound crazy, but I love reading about Richard Ramirez, and that's why, because Richard Ramirez was certainly involved in the occult. He was a huge follower of Anton LaVey, one of my personal, I don't know what you want to call it,
And
mentors.
one of your personal infamous serial killers, because obviously Sean.
No, Anton LaVey. He wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't a serial killer. He was, I consider him a philosopher.
Oh, you mean the guy, the devil, the Satanist guy,
Yeah.
the Church of Satan. Yeah. Well, look, if you look at what Satanism actually is, Satanism is actually atheism.
It's
humanism. It's actually the opposite of an extinctionist. If you think about it, it's actually more to do with where there's no such thing as the devil. There's no such thing as God.
Right.
Satanism is the worshipping of oneself. It's actually
the only holiday.
The
biggest holiday in Satanism is one's own birthday, and
it's like but do you know what, man? I'm gonna just say it. I'm just gonna say it. And one of the famous, I don't know if it was the Latter-day Saints. I know listen, we don't want to get into those mad bastards, but there's a scripture told where you look into the mirror and all you will receive is the devil back. And there is something to that. That is pure narcissism and pure evilness, is to think of oneself and only think of oneself. And that is the pure, for instance, these serial killers, rapists, murderers, pedophiles, these people only think of themselves, and to only think of yourself is the purest form of evil, in my opinion. It is so
because it leads to the extinction of the species.
But that's so Satan. You have to understand, if you're religious. I don't mean to overtalk you, but if you're religious, I wear a cross. I believe in God, right? And it's just these are my personal beliefs. But what I'm trying to say is that the biggest, if you're religious, the biggest. You were a bat.
Mm-hmm.
You were a bat. That's that's Ozzy Osbourne biting the head of bats. What I will say is the greatest thing the devil ever done was to make you believe that God didn't exist. Because look, whatever way whatever you believe in, that's fine. I respect atheism. I respect Buddhism. I respect Islam. I respect Christianity. I respect all these religions. I am a Christian, and that's who I am. And I can't. The older I get, the more I'm pushed into something. I can't explain it. It's just who I am. But I need to say that with Satanism,
I was raised Catholic. I was educated Catholic. I was, went all the way to about to enter seminary. So.
But that's what I mean, man. But when it comes to Satanism, even the Satanists themselves, the ones that are just the registered Satanists with the Church of Satan, they don't realize, but they're actually worshiping the actual devil. It's the actual devil. It's even to worship yourself and just to think of yourself in that purest form of evil, even though a lot of they're not serial killers or rapists or murderers.
No,
but that
you
is
have a criminal record and be a member of the Church of Satan.
But that's not forgiveness, is it though, Sean? Because we have to forgive people. We'll have to forgive murderers. We'll have to. For instance, if a murderer came up to me, right, and says, "Look, I murdered people in my past, but I'm not that person anymore," right? I have to forgive them. To be a Christian, to be a Muslim, you have to be able to forgive people. With Satanism, there's not a lot of forgiveness, man. You can't even join them if you've got a criminal past, and that to me is actually a projection of Satanism, of the devil. You will not be forgiven here. You will burn in hell. Listen, I don't want to go on about that too much. I've got my own. We should do a whole live on that, actually, because I think you've got some fascinating theories, which I totally agree with and disagree with. But listen, we're going to wrap this up.
I was friends with Anton LaVey's grandson. A lot of people hated him. He just recently died.
Yeah.
He was only 41 years old when he died. And he was accused of a lot of terrible things, unsubstantiated things. I always thought he was a nice guy. I always thought of him as a decent person. Not everybody agrees with me. In fact, a lot of people, would hate me just for, kind of defending him. But uh, the whole organization has changed. It's not what it was when Anton LaVey was alive. I have very little interest in what they're doing now. Um, I don't consider myself associated in any way with that particular group or the Satanic Temple, which is sort of a leftist sect of the church that was started by some, I guess, unhappy members.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give them any credit by saying their names, but um, it's I find it best to search within yourself to find your own spiritual path, and whether it's the left, which is considered sometimes satanic or Luciferian, or the right hand path, which is considered Christian or
Well, just as Emma goes there, because she's a big fan of yourself, Sean, and of the show. Emma, fantastic. Thank you very much for joining. We've got a film star. Emma's on set. She must be recording a film, and she's talked about, and just I don't want to go by her story. She says she's got a little story about Jack the Ripper from her friend. So Emma, listen, if you ever wanted to jump on some night and talk to me, and Sean, even if it's just for 15, you don't have to show your face. You can show your face. But if you, maybe some people can be a wee bit uncomfortable, just viewers can be uncomfortable that you don't have. You can just come on and we can hear your voice. All those things are possible. We would love to hear from yourself. If you ever want to jump on and tell that story, you're more than welcome. And Melissa has asked a question. She said, and this is a direct question to you, I'm assuming, Sean. What about female serial killers? Is there any female serial killers that we can talk about?
Yeah. Well, if you want to go back as far as Elizabeth Bathory, that's, I guess, would be considered the first female serial killer. But I guess the most famous would be Aileen Wuornos, who has one of the saddest stories of any serial killer I've ever heard. She was abused by just about every man that she was ever involved with, beaten, sexually abused, and then she became a lesbian and had a relationship with another woman, and she loved this woman, and this was the woman who ended up turning her in, testifying against her. She killed men who were, picking her up as a sex worker. So these guys, had nothing but the worst in mind for her.
So it's sort of like a warranted serial killer. Like she killed people that were taking advantage of her, that maybe didn't deserve to die, but they didn't deserve to be treating women that way. Like
one of the guys that she killed, though, he was kind of a good person who was helping her out, but she killed him anyway. She was schizophrenic. She had any number of mental health issues, and they still executed her. They put her to death when they knew that she was mentally ill.
That's evil. That's evil.
Is the most evil thing I can't think of anything more.
You know, we need to protect the vulnerable of society, especially.
And
Look, I'm not going to go.
she was absolutely vulnerable. She was
Yeah,
a
like I'm not a male feminist or anything, Sean. I'm not anything like that. I'm not none of those things. I think male feminists have got one agenda, and that's to sleep with as many women as possible and just be beta males.
well,
But we need to protect vulnerable people in society, especially women that are out there, man, because there's a lot of women in society at the minute that are on the streets that need help, that are being abused by men. And whenever they lash out, maybe they commit a crime. Okay, a crime is a crime, but for me personally, you know, I don't know the full story about that lady. I don't want to speak out of turn, but if she murdered people and killed people that were abusing her, then surely that doesn't warrant a death penalty. Like,
I don't think that she deserved a death penalty, and I don't think that her case, due to extenuating circumstances, even qualified as a death penalty case. All the men who sentenced her to die, I mean, she was hearing voices, she was interacting with the voices she was hearing. She was obviously in, you know,
schizophrenic. She should maybe schizophrenia brought on by the situation, you know, because you
no,
have to understand, you know,
she was mentally ill before
yeah,
any of this happened. I mean, she suffered head trauma. She had organic mental illness such as schizophrenia.
hereditary.
Yeah, you know, and that was only multiplied and intensified by the sexual and physical abuse she suffered. And you know, I'm like you. I'm not saying that I'm, you know, this huge feminist, but I certainly believe in you know, protecting people who are mentally ill, especially. You know, I lost a friend who was female to a serial killer. You know, um, you know, I just feel like um, people who suffer from mental illness um, are not capable of making a decision that is based on an abstract, like, right or wrong or moral or immoral, you know. So I think that in the case of someone who is proven to be mentally or at least of diminished capacity, a life sentence should be
Yeah, and there she will receive the help, because we've got people in society that do terrible things and then they get sectioned under the Mental Health Act. The fact that there's a lady that was abused and killed some of her abusers and then she got put to death, man, that is evil. That's two wrongs do not make a right. That is evil. That's actually three wrongs: the abuse that happened to her doing the killing, and them killing her. That is absolutely disgusting. That shouldn't have happened to her. Look, what we're going to do now is we're going to wrap up the show, because there are all separate topics that we can speak about in the future. Listen, guys, every Thursday, if you're watching this on Rumble right now, because I know there's a few viewers on Rumble, I apologize you can't put your comments on the screen. I always get good traction on Rumble. I just can't get your comments on the screen because StreamYard doesn't work that way. If you're watching this on Rumble right now, click the link in the description that will take you over to the Serial Killing Minds channel. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, and you can get involved in the live chat. Or you can just use the handle at Serial Killing Minds, all lowercase, and that will take you to the channel. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you're watching this on Holden Official, my main channel, Holden Official YouTube, click the link in the description and head over to the Serial Killing Minds channel and subscribe there, because this content will just be solely exclusive after about a year to the Serial Killing Minds channel, or just use the handle at Serial Killing Minds, all lowercase. And, you know, I'm multi-streaming here at the minute, but there will become a stage once we build up the viewers on the Serial Killing Minds channel it'll just be exclusive to that. And Sean has access to that channel. He is the co-owner of that channel. There'll be exclusive content going up onto that. You know, Sean's got a wealth of knowledge. He's got a lot of stories in his life. I listen to Sean. He's very, very inspirational character. The trials and tribulations of what he went through in his life and the where he's at now. He's a credit to his community. He's a credit to the USA. Make sure you head over and subscribe there, because you will be getting exclusive content from him. Also, once we teach him how to make a thumbnail and make a video, we're in the process of doing that at the minute. I'll be posting there too about my true crime thoughts. But yeah, guys, and remember, there's no toll you have to pay for this channel. There's no money. I do not want your money. There is a buy me a coffee link, but listen, I never promote that. I don't buy me a coffee. I don't want the coffee. All I want from you is to smash the like button and subscribe and hit that notification bell. That's all I want you to do. And if possible, share. If you know anybody that's into the true crime content, share, copy link the clipboard, send to your friend on Facebook or WhatsApp Messenger, even make a little social media post, or even with the true crime channel, the at Serial Killing Minds channel, share that channel, do that there for us, because, sharing is caring. This content is not promoted on YouTube. This content is very hard to monetize on YouTube. My channel took a bit of a hit over the time, but listen, I enjoy these podcasts with Sean. These are the type of podcasts that I like to do. And essentially, you have to do what you enjoy. So guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to have everybody in the live chat. Sean, once again, my friend, I have to thank you. You've came on, you've broke this down in minute detail once again, and I've learned something. And essentially, that's what YouTube's about. This is educational. We don't promote or we don't glorify the actions of any of these people, but it is a very, very interesting subject. Sean, is there anything you'd like to say before we end the live stream?
No, just thank everybody for listening. I'd like to thank my buddy Marky, who always watches. I don't know if he was watching tonight, but he always has something good to say about us. So, everybody who commented, everybody who watched, thanks, and keep coming back, checking it out.
And Emma, just to let you know, I don't know if you got that part. I did say you're more than welcome to come on and talk about the story you heard about the Jack the Ripper. You can come on. You can do a 15-minute segment sometime with me and Sean. If you don't want your identity out there, I can always hide your identity. You're more than welcome to. You've said that in the live chat, and I'm giving you an open invitation to jump on and have your say about the Jack the Ripper thing, about the story that your friend told you. Massive respect to everybody in the chat, Solway, Melissa, Emma, and everybody that's commented. I appreciate every single one of you guys. That is the end of the podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in, and peace.